Hello, I welcome everybody who has joined us. The media center Ukraine in Ukrinform is going on with its work. This is the 169th day of the full scale of the invasion of Russian aggressor onto our land, and I thank all of the journalists who are telling truth to the world about this war. So now we will be speaking about the very important topic, the compulsory evacuation from Donetsk Oblast, and our speaker is Iryna Vereshchuk, Vice Prime Minister, Minister for the Reintegration of Temporarily Occupied Territories of Ukraine. Iryna, could you please tell about the algorithms which are working now and which help can the people expect for who took a decision and need to be evacuated? Thank you so much. Good day. Okay, got it. Thank you so much, everybody. Hello. Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank the media. First of all, I'd like to thank the journalists, both local and foreign media, who are bringing truth to the world, who are doing everything for the whole world to know and help us to fight with the evil, to fight with the injustice, to fight against the propaganda and disinformation which is disseminated by megatons by the Russian Federation, the enemy of everything alive, civilized and democratic. Really, today I would like to report in a nutshell for the society and to the people who are, I hope, will hear us in Donetsk region, which advantages are of the compulsory evacuation, if I can say the word advantages. I would like to focus also after the report about the evacuation onto the two law drafts which we are preparing, that is on the so-called collaborators and passportization, because there are lots of questions now, and I'd like to explain the position of the ministry and the position of the cabinet of ministers, and if you allow me, I will give you the answers for all of the questions which I hope will emerge and will be finally mentioned. So, to prepare the evacuation from Donetsk region, we organized the coordinational headquarters. There was the special decree of the Cabinet of Ministers of the 29th of July 2022. This was the first time during the period of the independence of our state when we decided to have a compulsory evacuation, and we used the Article 33 of the Code of the Civil Protection of Ukraine, which foresees the reasons according to which this compulsory evacuation can be introduced. So, on the 2nd of August, by the decree of Cabinet of Ministers number 679, there has been voted for the compulsory evacuation from Donetsk Oblast, that is region. It was mentioning that Mr. Kyrylenko came to us, the head of Donetsk military administration, with the letter where he substantiated the necessity of the introduction of the compulsory evacuation. Their commission, which is at the military region administration, has analyzed the state of the heating, gas and power grids, and they analyzed the security state of the civilians, in particular children, women, elderly, and not that mobile people, and they came to the conclusion that the only way out to get through an incredibly hard winter, which we all will live both in Ukraine and beyond Ukraine, because you know how the EU and other countries are getting ready to the winter period, let alone the warfare and combat areas where the shellings are ongoing. We supported such an urge. We voted unanimously for the introduction of the compulsory evacuation, and we, as a cabinet of ministers, thank you for the honor, I am now the representative, we took the coordination and control. What do I mean by coordination and control at the highest central level? It means that the people who will be ready to be evacuated, there are certain information bulletins disseminated on the territorial communities, gromadas, the websites, in other communication media which are accessible. They will have the right for free to be evacuated from Donetsk region, and this right will be guaranteed by the state. We are organizing everything about their transportation we do not only organizing, we are doing that already, and I will report about the first results. Transportation, all the logistical points, if there's people who have some restrictions, we need to take the people from their homes and help them to be transformed to the train, for instance, which is now having its... And also we are promising the payments instantly. When the person or the family with many children is coming, depending on their needs and vulnerability of those families, I mean diseases, or maybe they have many children, or many other signs of vulnerabilities, we take them under control and we are helping them with the documents, the papers, the certificates of the IDPs, the payment of 2,000 for the grown-up, 3,000 for a child, and 3,000 for the person with disabilities. And also we are helping to register the international help and support, which can be found as well and which is numerous. We are speaking about the number of international organizations, both UNICEF and the UN and other organizations which are helping people in need, different organizations which have the programs of cash payments, that is compulsory when the person is being evacuated, for instance, from Donetsk region, and humanitarian aid and relief, food products, hygiene products, whatever people may need. I can even tell you more. Just 2 days ago, we took a decision to help people with the laptops. I mean the families with many children, the children of school age, for them to begin their study year, understanding that they will have the tool, the laptop, for the year, for the studies, to start in time and with high quality. We do understand that when people are courageous enough to change their location, they are not only under stress, but they don't have their material provision. When you are at home, the walls, your own walls are helping you, but when you're out of home, the new circumstances are hard for the people who did not travel that much during their life and who were affected during the 8 years of Russian aggression. I'm speaking about Donetsk and Luhansk regions. We're also speaking about the full accompanying of the people who are not mobile. It is just impossible sometimes to transport elderly people, physically challenged people who are just afraid of uncertainty. They are afraid that they will become a burden. They are afraid that they cannot be adjusted, and they say that they will never leave. So responsible children cannot leave their parents, their impaired parents behind, and they are creating danger for themselves and for the parents and for the children. So now we can find approximately 50,000 of children in Donetsk region. That is a huge number. I will tell you why I consider it to be a lot, because looking at how much we managed to do during the first week of evacuation, I understand the dynamics, and I understand how much time will be needed to bring all the children back from those areas before the cold comes. So I would ask you, journalists, to urge for your readers, for your viewers, to do everything possible for the mothers with the children who are still thinking whether they should evacuate. Please make them aware they will not be alone with their problems with little children. They will not be alone with the problems how it used to be in April. I know that there were people who were leaving from Donetsk region for the west of Ukraine, and unfortunately in some time they could not adapt. They spent all of their savings, they spent the money for the rent, which sometimes was too high, and they had to come back. That is bad, but that's what we need to speak about. Now this situation will never take place. Everybody who decides to do that, and there are several thousand already, I will be speaking about them later, will get the necessary medical help, besides the material one, besides the humanitarian aid and other types. It will be medical, psychological, educational help. They will be instantly, if they would like to have online or offline studies process, and all other types of help. So I would like to report how many people were already evacuated during the days since the 1st of August till the 11th of August of 2022, which have to be compulsorily evacuated according to the legislation. During the compulsory evacuation of the population of Donetsk region to the safe regions of the predefined regions, we have evacuated 3,908 people as of today. Out of them, 777 children. That is approximately 1,000 of children out of 50,000 which need to be evacuated. That is a very low dynamic. We see that it's summer, that it seems to the people that summer will go on, and mostly people do not think what will happen during the winter, because it seems for them that they will be able to take the heating device and to turn it on, and even if they don't have gas, they will have coal or wood because they are living in the private sector, as we can hear from the hotlines analyzing the situation, what the people are saying about. Maybe it will become easier, maybe the front line will go away, and all of those maybes, unfortunately, can lead to the real threat of life and health of your children. The children which do not have heat, which do not have the proper conditions, because I don't think that lots of people have the bomb shelters of the necessary level, which will stand all the shellings and the lack of power, and they are so self-isolated and autonomous that you can afford yourselves to live during 3 or 4 months in winter without dependence on power or heating. So today we are waiting for the informational explanatory work. The state staff is ready. The local authorities are doing their work. We have created the common chat where we have the state emergency service, the ministries of all of the people involved in the process, both education and healthcare and social protection, both of the local level and the central level, all of them who are just needed there. We are working 24/7 and we know what is happening there. Now we just need to let people know and to explain them the following. And I would like them to hear us. Donetsk region, please hear us. The compulsory evacuation from Donetsk region, yes, it is done for the first time, and so far it is the only one. But our forecasts and our analysis shows that it will go on in other regions. We can see now the situation which is deteriorating, and when the autumn-winter heating period starts, it will definitely deteriorate. And the heating will be really complicated to provide. We understand what the adversary is doing, and we can foresee that his efforts to ruin and destroy the heating grids and the sources of electrical energy which are necessary and critically important for the cities and regions, that probably they will be the objects of their shellings. We understand that not all of them will be repaired, and we understand that some of the cities and villages of Zaporizhia, of Kherson, of Kharkiv regions will be without the means for life, without heating, what's the most important, and without light, without power, well, that's also important. And also the grids which we can find there, if we just look at the electrical grids, they will not stand this, unfortunately, the process. So we are asking people to take care about their security, let alone the shellings, which are very dense. It witnesses that it will become harder and harder to have measures of evacuation. It will be harder to reach them. There will be fewer territories with free access. Our army is doing everything to evacuate people. It gives us the opportunities to create corridors. They are covering people. They are taking people themselves. We have some cases in Donetsk region where only armed forces could reach Soledar or other distant points and take the impaired people and the people who cannot move, physically challenged people from those areas. That is why we are calculating the efforts of the state, because as far as you understand, 500,000 of people who will be located from the southern and eastern regions is a lot, and we cannot locate them in an instant. You just take into consideration the number of people who are already in the central and western parts of our state, and please take into account that the regions are getting ready to the winter, which will be the hardest during all of the times of the existence of Ukraine. We need to be responsible. The state is guaranteeing evacuation. It is ready to prepare and to pay. We, as a Ministry of Reintegration, and I personally as a Vice Prime Minister, have an opportunity of institutional response and also decrees for the military administration. Those are the tools which we are using for the people who decided to evacuate. But now this decision has to be taken in advance. It has to be taken beforehand. We shouldn't wait for winter and then to go to the railway station saying, please take us away. We know that unfortunately what was happening in March and April, we don't want to have the same mistakes. As the representative society, we would like to be working. We don't want to let the enemy to use the cold and the apathy or depression, which will definitely take place, and we are awaiting for that as well. When the people are ready to stand through the shellings, not to leave. This is not the right thing to do. That's why I am here. First I'm speaking to Donetsk region and all the rest regions as well. In a nutshell, I'd like to report how many citizens just in these 10 days of August left the temporarily occupied territories, and I thank Kherson region for that. You know, I instantly and often appealed for Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, because I know that the part of Zaporizhia region which is temporarily occupied now, we are saying that the occupier is trying to use the people who can be found on those territories as the live shield, knowing that we will liberate those territories. They take the women and the children and use them as live shield, and they will go on doing that if we ourselves don't take the decision that you cannot become a live shield, and the security of our children is the case for all of the state. It's not only the private case for the mother or the father where the child should stay. So if we are speaking about Kherson region, this is only just during the last 10 days, almost 5,000 persons, mostly women with children, and I thank them for that. It's very hard to leave. There are lots of checkpoints there. It's always a huge risk. But everybody who was courageous enough, I thank volunteers a lot. Not those who try to earn money, not those so-called businessmen who are trying to get payment for each place in the vehicle. We will definitely look at that. We promised that we will not let the people in Donetsk region alone who have to pay up to 10,000 hryvnia for the place which was already paid for by the international organization and the state. It was already organized for free. There are some people and there are some inhumans, but in the majority of cases, people left the territories, and I thank them for that, for the feedback that they call us and they tell us, we came back, please help us, we have 3 children, and instantly we are helping the people. Please call 1548, the hotline 1548. Explain the situation, the problems which are emerging, and the problems will be emerging. We will definitely not let you be alone, and will do everything possible. And also 5,123 persons were evacuated from Zaporizhia region, that is Berdyansk, Melitopol, Energodar. Those territories are really affected by the occupiers, and I thank the people who were able to be saved, who saved their children and their relatives. From Kharkiv region we had 1,671 persons. So from the temporarily occupied territories, as of today, since the beginning of August, 12,054 persons left. 3,517 children among them who were saved as well. I urge you, please be responsible, be decisive and very firm in your intentions to save yourselves and to save your relatives. If there are any questions about evacuation, I will be grateful for them, and I will answer them a bit later. Now I'd like, in a nutshell, mention 2 law drafts, which have been developed by our ministry together with all of the affiliate ministries, our law enforcement authorities, the Prosecutor General Office, the Security Service, everybody who was joining this work. I thank them because the relevance and importance of those law drafts cannot be overrated, especially for those who are at the temporarily occupied territories, especially for those who don't know how to behave and whether they are not considered collaborators. And if they are considered to be collaborators, why? And for those who are decision makers to know what is awaiting for them. So I'm now speaking about the 2 law drafts. The first one is the amendments to the Criminal Code of Ukraine, and the second is the amendments to the law in Ukraine on the provision of rights and freedoms of the citizens and the legal status of the temporarily occupied territories. We are speaking about the so-called law on collaborators. On the 3rd of March 2022, the Criminal Code of Ukraine had a new article, 111.1, according to which the collaborators' work is criminalized. Part 4 of this article foresees the criminal responsibility for the transferring of material resources to the illegal militarized formations created at the temporarily occupied territories, or the armed or militarized formations of the aggressor state, or the economic activity in the cooperation with the aggressor state. If I can speak in simple words, it means that almost all of the activities which is conducted at the temporarily occupied territories, according to this article 111.1 of the Criminal Code, is the sign of the collaborate activity. Those who provide medical services, educational services, communication services, and patient payment can also be considered by this article. Of course, it cannot be like that, because we understand what is happening at the temporarily occupied territories, what's the resistance there, how many people don't want to obey to those authorities, and how they were suffering of that. And unfortunately, it will go on like this. So that is why we offered to clarify the position of Part 4 of the Article 111.1 of the Criminal Code, marking that only the voluntary economic activity will be punished in the cooperation with the aggressor state and the legal authorities, with the exception of the cases defined by the law. And in the second law draft, which I listed above, those cases were foreseen directly. For instance, that the pension delivery, or the medical services provision, or the communal services, the work of the banks, for instance, are not collaborators' activity. Well, of course, we'll need to work on those articles. We have the committee, and we are awaiting for the debates and discussions. But in any case, we would like the people at the temporarily occupied territories to know that we do not consider them to be perpetrators just because they are there and need to survive. We would like people to know what is awaiting for them in case if they are courageous enough to voluntarily collaborate with the enemy, to work with the authorities, occupational authorities, understanding that in any case they will be taken to liability. No, we would like everything to be very just and clear, because we are the state which is complying with the international humanitarian law, and we know that the human rights exist. We know that people are forced to work there, that the occupier is forcing them to work. That is why we would like to separate, for people to understand what they will be responsible for and what the liability won't be there. And in a nutshell, I'd like to speak about the sanctions for this work. If it is the voluntarily economic activity in the cooperation with the aggressor state, then they will be jailed up to 5 years with the confiscation. That's a very serious sanction and a very serious punishment. So everybody, please think whether you need to cooperate with the aggressor or not, and please evacuate, not to allow the occupier to use our people, and then for people not to be responsible at the trial. in front of the state. The second law draft is about the counteraction against Russian passportization. This is the huge issue, and we won't be silent about that, because we know that since 2014, Russia is forcefully passportizing the Ukrainian population, Ukrainian citizens on the territory of our state. We understand the threats and the scale. We can foresee what's the aim of these actions of Russia. Our intelligence services give us the information how these activities are being done, and how systematically Russia emphasizes on that during their occupation and annexation. We understand that Russia, during all of those years in Transnistria and Abkhazia and Syria and other states, now they know how to use passportization as a tool of occupation. And also we know that Russia, as a state, a terrorist state, really knows well that the international humanitarian law is helpless. Because when we speak about the international humanitarian law, then maybe when people who hear me and see me, they know that this is the violation which is registered in the international humanitarian law, that the forced passportization cannot be done. But whoever read that, they know and remember that this is the annex to the Fourth Hague Convention of the 18th October of 1907. We have nothing new. It's still dates back to 1907. We cannot just comply with an international humanitarian law in this aspect. It's just really irresponsible for the state which is fighting for its survival. That is why we understand that it is foreseen in the broader sense that we can open criminal proceedings, but the state of the work in this case, as for the forceful passportization and the number of verdicts and the number of the cases of taking to the liability, witnesses that it is necessary to introduce into the legislation and to define and to foresee the criminal responsibility for the forceful passportization. I will explain two aspects which we are going to mention in this law draft. We would like for the criminal code to have a very clear definition that under the martial law, when the citizen of Ukraine, who is the person who is authorized to perform the functions of the state or the local self-governance authorities, or as of the 23rd of February 2022 used to be a person like this, when this person gets the citizenship of the aggressor state or the passport of the aggressor state, it means that if you are the person who took the oath for the local self-governance, if you put a hand on our constitution, that is the Bible of a citizen, you took the oath of the state official, you took the oath of the National Police, National Guard, the State Emergency Service, or any other authority, so you have the authorities to perform the functions of the state, you don't have the right to get the passport of the aggressor state under any perspective, under any angle. So if the person took the oath as a citizen of Ukraine, he or she doesn't have the right to do that. So yes, this is the hard sanction. The person will be jailed 10 to 15 years with the seizure of property. We need to stop this parade which Russia is organizing, having this forceful passportization for the people who should take responsibility for their actions and for the actions on the territories, because we are representing the state. It is Ukraine here, and the state will protect itself in this case. And the second aspect which we are offering, the actions about the forcing of the citizens to take citizenship or getting passports and papers, and the creation of the conditions according to which the volume of the rights of the citizens will be smaller if they don't have the citizenship of the aggressor state. So that is, forcing of the people to get passports will also be taken under liability from 5 to 8 years in jail. And there is one more important aspect, that is propaganda of this passportization. If the person, a citizen of Ukraine, let alone the enemy, we know all of that, they will take their responsibility. If the person takes the passport, which is just in the blood of our children, and is shooting videos, posting them online into the social media, trying to prove the people, knowing that they are public, knowing that they have influence on the territories, like the city mayor or the MP of the local council, it will also be punished. So propaganda, if it's a function of the state, and if the people are forced, like the state official is forcing people because of some circumstances. For instance, we will not provide you the medical treatment if you don't take the passport. This is forcing people, and that's why those people have to be responsible. Well, it's obvious that we consider everyone who is on the temporarily occupied territories, who have to stay there, that Russia is forcing them. But we need to separate them, both in the criminal code and in our legislation. We need to provide the tools for our authorities and for the people who take such a decision. They need to understand that it's not just the convention of 1907, but with our modern legislation, what they are responsible for. We would also like to foresee in this law draft that that Ukraine does not recognize, and it's not the reason to lose the citizenship of Ukraine when you forcefully get automatically the citizenship of the aggressor state of Russian Federation. If you are automatically said that you are the citizens, in spite of you not writing any papers, there are some cases like that, it is not considered to be the reason to lose citizenship of Ukraine. When the citizens of Ukraine get the citizenship of Russian Federation because of the actions of Russian Federation and the creation of conditions according to which the volumes of the rights of Ukrainians will be lower if they don't have the papers of the aggressor state. For instance, if you don't take the passport, you won't get to the train. You cannot even move from one settlement to a different one, and the person needs to go because they have cancer, or because they have dependency on insulin, or they must have hemodialysis. It cannot be like that. We understand that Russia forcefully made the person to get such a passport, and we do not consider that it can lead to automatic loss of the citizenship of Ukraine, and also the citizenship of Russian Federation during the martial law by the citizens of Ukraine who were deported to the territory of Russian Federation because of the armed aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine. We had lots of cases in the hotline, and I personally had calls from the people who were forcefully deported to Russian Federation. So if you got the Russian passport, if you are forced to get the passport, because otherwise Russia won't let you leave abroad, then the propagandists and the enemy convinced them that the people will be considered perpetrators. It's not true. I don't want just to promise you. It has to be written in the legislation. We will not consider such people as the perpetrators. The people who are deported are the victims of deportation, and the Russian passport, if they got it in this case, in this way, to be deported from the territory of the Ukraine is not a crime. So I ask the MPs and whoever it depends on, please adopt such amendments to the criminal code, explain thoroughly those changes, and I do hope that it will help the people who are awaiting for such amendments, trying to survive, trying to save their health. That's it from me. Please, questions from you. Iryna, coming back to the evacuation. Just a question left. We understand that the person who takes the decision whether to be evacuated or not, one of the first questions is accommodation. Is the state ready to help in this issue for the person who is taking such a decision, and to help for the person to understand that he or she will have accommodation? Thank you. This is what I forgot to speak about, because people are afraid that they won't have a place to stay at. So the compulsory evacuation foresees accommodation of the people, and the state is taking all of the expenses to provide accommodation. People will be living for free. No one will take money from them, and definitely they won't be driven away from those places. if we organized the evacuation train, the people should understand that they will be met at the railway station, they will be brought to the accommodation under good conditions. It won't be just anywhere. I went and saw that on my own, and every time when we meet with the head of the military administration, we are speaking about accommodation. We can have and provide help from the central level. Decree 590 and one more law draft gave us an opportunity to provide repairment and maintenance works, capital repairment, the construction, the procurement of services and goods to help reconstruct the residential or even non-residential blocks for the IDPs, for the internally displaced persons, and also we decreased the tender procurements to 5 days. We did everything possible for the regions to provide the IDPs with the free accommodation. Thank you, dear colleagues. Any questions from you? Please take the microphones and introduce yourselves. Hello. I'm from Suspilne. You said about the possible compulsory evacuation from other regions. Are there any other dates when it starts and where from? Thank you. It will depend on the head of the military administrations. As I said, first this should be the commission, and they should assess the current situation for the opportunity to provide the heating season, and to provide the necessary heating for the winter period, and also the security issue. Whether the intensity is there. The representatives of the armed forces in these commissions, the state emergency services, the law enforcement, and they need to provide assessment. As soon as we get this written assessment, we will instantly consider it at the Cabinet of Ministers. But again, our forecast that Donetsk region will not be the only one to evacuate. And we understand that now we are considering the issue of the eastern and southern regions. Have we got any other questions?
Just to check, the other regions, are you talking only about temporarily occupied areas, or do you mean the whole of Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblast? And how many people are still in Donetsk Oblast who should leave? Next question, can you comment about papers that people think they will need to sign in Donetsk Oblast if they decide not to leave? That they'll have to sign a paper saying they don't expect the government to provide them with utilities or benefits. Thank you.
Дякую.
Thank you. Yes, I'm speaking about the part of Zaporizhia region, because you know that the part is occupied, and thankfully the part of Zaporizhia region is under control of our state, and we'll do everything possible for deoccupation to take place as soon as possible. When we're speaking about Donetsk region and the number of people we are planning to evacuate, that's approximately 220,000. If we take Donetsk region and the fact that they have 350,000 altogether, we understand that there are some people who wouldn't evacuate under any conditions, under any circumstances. We calculated, knowing 50,000 of children who have to be evacuated, and we calculated it should be 220,000. We managed to evacuate approximately 4,000 people. There are people who are living on their own without the evacuation trains. This is also the substantial part from Donetsk and Lugansk regions. From the temporarily occupied regions, 769 people left on their own. They are evacuated as well, just on their own. So there can be an impression that that's approximately 200,000 of people who need to be evacuated. Answering about the compulsory papers which need to be signed. Yes, we have this form which is adopted by our legislation. We understand that not all of the people will take this decision to be evacuated, but we are the democratic state. We cannot force people, and we will never do that. But we will need to have a responsibility between our proposal, our suggestion, and their decision. We are offering for the person in case if the person takes the decision not to leave, not to be evacuated, but we made a person aware. For instance, the commission came with the representative of the state emergency service, the local authority, and they came to the person's home. I am just explaining in the very simple language just to understand how it is happening. So they came to the home of the person, and the person is just decides not to leave, so he or she signs the blank, the form, that he or she is aware what will happen in case of negative consequences. We are speaking about the status children, the orphans, and the children who don't have the parents' custody or who are in the so-called state children. In this case, the state will take care about the very quick evacuation of such children. Thanks to Pavlo Kyrylenko, he's done a titanic piece of work for those people not to be that numerous. We don't have many problems with the status children, but 50,000 of the children who have the parents and custodians who are awaiting for their parents to be responsible enough and to leave beforehand. For such parents, we will definitely have a special paper to be signed. They will have to sign the paper that they are aware about the negative consequences for their child, because the state should protect the children and the interests of the children, and of course we will protect in this case the children as well. But there won't be a single forced action. There won't be any forced seizure. This is our conscious and responsible interaction. The state offers, the citizen chooses. Our responsibility is to suggest, to offer. We need to make anything for the citizen to have such an option, but the responsibility of the citizen is to take this option or not. Thank you. Any other questions? Yulia Kesova, CNN. Could you please tell, is there a percentage of people who are signing this paper or this form who don't want to evacuate? And do you have the indicator, the figure of the people who are coming back already, who are evacuating in March or April and they're out of money, so they're coming back to Donetsk? And one more question about the people who are living in the western regions, in the schools and kindergartens. What will happen with them when the children go back to the studies? Thank you for the relevant questions. Yes. So, we don't have the number of the people who don't want to leave, because we try to convince people and to inform them, to make them aware. We don't want to have... we understand that people need time. People need time to hear the information. Lots of them don't know the information. They don't know that the state provides such the benefits that it provides. So we took such a necessary critical time to explain. In case if we see that the explanations don't lead to any outcomes, then we will ask people to sign the paper, whether they understand or not. We don't have such indicators, but we need to understand that they will have to sign the papers. As for the people who came back, I don't have the precise number, but I know that it is substantial. The percentage of the people who came back home, as for me, is high. And this is again the lack of hours of the central authorities and local self-governance authorities knowing all the system of coordinates and the circumstances of the communities. We needed to work more in April and May for this percentage not to come back, because I know that in Zaporizhia region lots of people are coming back. They are leaving during the shellings to the safer territories and coming back. So it's already unfortunately inappropriate, because people are almost like tourists going to and fro and to the contact line. There won't be any commercial tours there. This is a mess, and this mess is just for the good of the enemy. So we are doing that on a daily basis. The Cabinet of Ministers adopted the decree 1455, which was adopted before the 24th of February, which introduced the position of the commandant and the commandant headquarters at the nodes, at the important settlements. We wrote the letter to Mr. Zaluzhny to appoint the commandant with the full authorities during the combats and during the martial law, and our military need to have those authorities. And this is the right thing. We thank them for the trust of the local population, and we asking them to avoid such conflicts, problematic issues, how to leave and to come back to the temporarily occupied territories. Because if we don't have the regulation of the state, we don't have the rules, then the corruption and chaos can begin, and the lack of order can be there. So we would ask Mr. Zaluzhny, and I'm sure he will do that as soon as possible, to sign such a decree. And in Zaporizhia region, everything will be in order. Also, you asked me about the accommodation in the western regions, about the schools. Yes, the schools. 57,000 of residents of the internally displaced persons are living in the hostels of the higher educational institutions. It's not critical. It's just 0.4% of the overall number of schools and educational institutions. That will not impact the beginning of the new education year, because you have seen and heard there has been an audit conducted. We have conducted the full inventarization of the educational institutions as for the availability of shelters, bomb shelters, whatever is necessary to begin the offline educational process. And we could see in the analysis that it's not critical. But we need to say that this is not about the 57,000 people only, but other people, mostly from Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson regions. Those are the people who will need accommodation and living there. So we have the decree of the Cabinet of Ministers, and we sent it to the military administrations with the request to provide the precise picture how many schools can be used, how many kindergartens can be used, how many educational institutions can be used for the location of our IDPs, let alone that they will be driven away, vice versa. The educational institutions will be even used more for the accommodation of the IDPs. We've got a question here. Hello, Chernomorsk TV radio company. Let alone the topic of evacuation, I'd like to ask you the following. Do we know that what is happening with the prisoners of war from Azov regiment? They wanted to say that those are terrorists, they don't want to let them go. Do we have any mechanisms? When can we hope that they are coming back home? And secondly, is the ministry involved in the investigation what took place in Olenivka? Why our guys have been killed? And maybe the bodies will come back. I know that you're coordinating different issues, so I do hope you will answer. As for the bodies, we have Oleg Kotenko here, who is the authorized persons on the missing persons, who is weekly providing the exchange of bodies and communicating in these cases formally with the enemy to provide this exchange of bodies. Several days ago, there has been another exchange of bodies, 17 bodies, including the bodies from Azovstal factory. So Oleg will speak now, and then I will speak about Azov. So Oleg Kotenko, the authorized person on the missing persons from the Ministry of Reintegration. As for the bodies, weekly we are working on this issue. Yes, really, we have already taken lots of bodies back. Moreover, from Mariupol, we took more than 400 bodies of the defenders of Mariupol and Azovstal and the factory named after Ilyich. We are taking it, and it's being ongoing. If you are interested in this topic, the first person who is publishing this is the website of the Ministry of Reintegration. This is the very necessary source of information. We took 17 bodies. You know that there have been as if 16 of them, but there were 17 of them. So the first source of information is the Ministry of Reintegration website. Follow the information and you will know when and how the bodies of the deceased are taken. Okay, as for Azov, as you know, I was dealing with and I was responsible for the evacuation of the civilians from Azovstal. It took place in the beginning of May this year. It was very hard and complicated, but we coped to do that. We have already discussed that here as well. Evacuation and the negotiations process to bring the prisoners of war from Azovstal, we are not only speaking about Azov regiment, but about 2,500 of people who were located on the territory of Azovstal. The main Directorate of Intelligence, Mr. Budanov, is responsible for that. The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, defined him as responsible for all of negotiations. So I don't know what's the state of the negotiations now. What's the state of the details? Because I don't know all the details of the negotiations. I did not take part in those negotiations, and I'm not taking part now. But again, I'd like to emphasize that in Azovstal, we have 131 women. Among them, the service women from the Azov regiments, military medics, the border service employees, the 36th Brigade of the Infantry, and the National Guard, and other formations. 33 medics, which are considered to be non-combatants according to Geneva Conventions. Those were in Azovstal as well. More than 400 of border service employees. Lots of people who are now awaiting that we will never forget about them. We will be speaking about that loud and clear, about the terrorism of Russia against those people. We will never be silent about that, and we will fight for them. It is so important for the world community to keep in focus of the attention the terroristic actions of Russia. And I consider that what was happening in Olenivka, the US should introduce Russia in the list of the terrorist states or the countries which are funding terrorism, because it was pure terroristic act. That's my personal opinion. And as for the negotiations about the exchange and other details, that's to the main intelligence directorate. Hello, Oleg Gardin, Ukrinform. I've got two questions. First, about the context of the residence and accommodation. You said that the state is taking the expenses to provide people with accommodation, but does the state take the expenses from the budget about the heating of the residence and accommodation? And can the state provide the heating season in those accommodation? And as for the evacuation with the pets, if the person wants to evacuate with the pet, is there an opportunity to provide conditions for the pets? Yes, I'm dealing with that because I know that sometimes the person does not take the decision to evacuate just because they don't know where the pet will get to and cannot afford, because of the big heart, because they get attached, because of just humane feelings and emotions, to leave the pet at the temporarily occupied territory. That's why we decided to allow the evacuation with your pet. Maybe you saw in the Facebook I posted the red cat who came from Donetsk region and also the dogs who came from that region. I know that sometimes the pets are living together with the people because the people are coming back with their emotions, with their pain, so there can be some conflicts emerging. But all of the heads of the military administrations, all the deputies which are dealing with the IDPs and their accommodation in residential blocks, they know that they need to help for our pets to move together, saving themselves from the enemy, saving from them from the death. This is our holy obligation and duty. I think that we shouldn't be as an aggressor state. We shouldn't be that harsh and cruel. So we need to do everything for the families who have pets. And the first question was about... Yes, please. This is the authorized person on IDPs. Hello, Deputy Minister, the authorized person on the internally displaced persons, Pavlo Kozyrev. You're right. The issue of accommodation and compensation for the accommodation, that is, the communal services payments, are interconnected. Now, we, as the ministry, have initiated 2 amendments and changes which will definitely incentivize and help. That is, the first, the shelter program. You know that the state is compensating for the economic entities which are taking the IDPs for free. They compensate for each person 450 hryvnia per month. Since the 1st of October, we are preparing the changes to the rules of this program. Since the 1st of October, so far I will not tell you the sum of money. Everybody knows 900 of hryvnia, so it is 2 times more. That is doubling the sum. So you can see the compensation will be increasing, and it will be the stimuli, as well as the second change, which is almost adopted by the government, that is Decree 261, according to which the state is compensating the communal services so far to the communal and state property institutions which took the IDPs for free. But after several meetings of the Vice Prime Minister on the problematics of the IDPs, we heard that there is the request, which is rather powerful, to these rights to be given to the legal entities and private persons and sole proprietors. For instance, the religious communities had such a proposal, and this decree is almost adopted by the government. We are sure that such changes will stimulate the increase of the opportunities to accommodate the people, because we heard that we have a very high-scale challenge. Thank you. Any other questions left?
Manson, Global News Canada. You were talking about the numbers of people who will, need to leave these communities. You said, I believe, 220,000 from Donetsk Oblast, not to mention Zaporizhia, Kherson. These are hundreds of thousands of people, and you currently have many, many who are internally displaced now. Where will they go? When will these accommodations be ready? And if you're talking about putting them in schools and educational institutions, why would someone leave their home that they've, built their entire life to go sit in a church with, hundreds of others?
Yes, you're right. We are speaking about hundreds of thousands of people. So why should people leave their homes? Because they don't have homes. Russia took their homes. They destroyed their homes, dropping thousands of bombs and shells onto their civilian objects, destroying their right for living and right for accommodation. And now we are saying that to save their lives, we should evacuate them, because we understand that the shellings of Russia, targeted shellings of the enemy against the civilian infrastructure, are targeted to kill and to destroy as many of civilians as possible. Against the territory of Ukraine, we had more than 3,000 of missile shellings against the territory of Ukraine, among which every fifth shelling was against the civilian infrastructure, targetedly, with a high scale and with huge destructions. Do we have any other choice left as the representatives of the authorities? Does the world community have any other choice? Because we are co-responsible for the life and health of the citizens in Ukraine in this case. No, we don't have any other choice. We don't have any other way out. So we recommend, we insist, and we create all the conditions to be evacuated and to move to the safer regions. But just to say that there can be safer or less safe regions, it's hard to say. Because when the winter comes, Russia, who will targetedly destroy our critical infrastructure, the infrastructure which will conduct the heating services provision, will do everything possible for the whole territory of Ukraine to be considered critically dangerous. So I ask you, through the media, through the international media, foreign media, please tell about that to the whole world. I really ask you, for the leaders of the civilized world who are now taking the decisions how to move on, whether they should provide armament and weapons for us, in which proportions, in which dynamic, and so on, please understand what is awaiting for us. I'm saying us, because Ukraine is Europe. It's a geographic and geopolitical center of Europe, and we cannot tell that someone misunderstood something and did not acknowledge what's the aim of Russia. And Russia has the aim to destroy Ukraine as it is, to destroy the state as it is. and not a single excuses that Russia has chosen only military targets but just targeted civilians is not true, because Russia is targetedly shelling against civilians, killing our children and women and elderly. So now about the numbers which you named. Yes, 200,000 from Donetsk region. Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, we are planning that it will be about 500,000. Are the regions ready? Yes, they are. They don't have any other choice. They are intensely expanding the spaces to accommodate the people. Everybody understands that the winter will be hard, and using this opportunity, I'd like to urge for the international organizations which are working on the territory of Ukraine, who are getting billions from the governments, from the business community, and from other sources, please be very responsible about the issue of the humanitarian aid and relief, including through the funding of the projects on accommodation and shelter for the people. Because I can hear lots of conversations, I can see lots of presentations as a vice prime minister. I'm meeting lots of foreign organizations, international organizations. I'm meeting with some of them for the 5th or 10th time, and I can hear that everything will be done perfectly, but unfortunately I don't see many results. Please pay attention to that, because when we see some of the UN programs, I will be very frank and sincere, because I heard that this is the question from the foreign journalist. I hope that it will be heard that when we see the programs which should have helped our communities, our local self-governance authorities to provide accommodation, unfortunately, as of the end of or the middle of August, still they didn't adopt the decision about the funding. So when you ask the Ukrainian authorities, we never get rid of responsibility. But please ask the international organizations which get billions and billions for the projects which need to save our children and women and help them evacuate. Only when we feel this core responsibility, our common responsibility, and this need to help our children and people, then it will work. And I hope that the authorities will do what they have to do that with a high quality. Thank you. The last question, please. Olga Mosyan, Army-Inform. So, as for the context of the international support, you said that as of now, there are some of the programs which are helping Ukrainians who left from the temporarily occupied territories, or maybe still planning to. Could you please tell which programs are working now and who and how can use them? Thank you. Thank you. We are now speaking about the programs which can be found cash payments, cash-driven ones. This is the payments which are given in cash. People can come and get it from the International Committee of the Red Cross, the Ukrainian Red Cross, and I'm really grateful for that, to the UNICEF, if you've got children, this is the program which is dealing with children, to other organizations from the UN, and they will be given cash support. Also, there are some programs which are helping with food products, hygiene products, and this is I'm appealing for the international organizations to procure such services and goods from Ukrainian producers. We would like not just to bring sugar or flour, which we already produce here in Ukraine. We shouldn't bring it from abroad, because in this way we are helping internal IDPs to get jobs and to get a chance to live through the winter, to survive. And also I'd like to get to the international organizations which are focusing on the services and goods and works on the organizations of accommodation. Those are repairment works, the reconstruction, which they have money for. So this is, as for me, they have the weakest, unfortunately, work done. Those are just dotty or one-time projects which are not helping. If we have already the food products delivery, but Ukraine has never been a country which did not have its own food. Everything was okay here with food. I always said that I understand that we have some of the problems with water delivery, but let us make what's needed. and what the government asks you to do. Sometimes it happens that the international community is thinking that it knows better, and they know everything, and they take the decision separately from us, and then it turns out that we have chaotic result. We do not understand each other. Because the war in Ukraine differs from the conflicts in other corners of the world, because we have authorities here, we have the central government, and we take the decisions. The decisions are taken in the responsible way, taking into account all the aspects and the scale of the issues which are awaiting for us, the understanding and so on. I thank you, and I'd like to say again, I'd like to thank the UNICEF who came to the government and said, we have the following programs and opportunities. Let's make the memorandum for you to know what you can rely upon and what we are capable of. Let us coordinate, and then it is working. But when we are doing that on our own, and of course it can lead to some of the problems and conflicts, the outcomes won't be there. We don't have time for mistakes. So I'm very sincere appealing to you, be responsible, especially those who have international mandate. For instance, the UN organizations. They are very numerous. They are writing lots of perfect programs. They are working a lot. They are writing lots of presentations. But it's a bit not enough of outcomes and results. I would be grateful if the organizations could quicker take practical decisions. The theoretical decisions are okay. Thank you. This was maybe there are any other questions. Yes, there is the question, please.
So you mentioned gas, electricity, water that Ukraine will not be able to provide. What about benefits, pensions, other benefits, healthcare, police, emergency services? Will you be stopping those services at some point to also encourage people to leave? For example, I heard in Konstantinivka that the hospital will close at the end of August.
Well, you mean the temporarily occupied territories, or you mean the territory of Donetsk region, which is under control?
Under Ukrainian control.
Але знаходяться на межі і під постійним.
Звичайно, що
Well, of course, the decisions will be taken according to the security factors, which will be of top priority. Even Konstantinivka, there is the threat for life and health of medical employees. Of course, we need to take the decision, and it won't be one-time decision. Let's not be afraid. Let's not hide from hard decisions, because it's hard for everyone, and the truth will help us only. As for the payments and pensions and remuneration, so far the liquidity of the budget allows us to say that all of the payments are timely and sufficient. We do not have the debts and the delays in the payments in the budget sphere and the payments for the pensioners. Of course, it will depend on how quickly and how of quality will provide the international help and support. Maybe you saw how much damage was taken by the business community, the industry of Ukraine. This aggression of Russia against the whole world. Because if you think that this damage is against Ukraine, you are mistaken. Those are the problems of the whole world, including the EU, including different countries which are not even on the European continent. So I think that it's better for us now to do everything possible to stop the enemy, to get the weapons which will give us the opportunity till winter to finalize the hot combats, the active combat and warfare, and to think how to restore, not to introduce the conflict for years, which will exhaust Europe, which will exhaust Ukraine, of course, because we are suffering as much as Europe does, all the economic and energy griefs. But just Europe is thinking how to restrict the level of the temperature in the accommodation for 2 degrees. And we are doing the same, but with blood and health and lives of our children. Dear colleagues, thank you so much. I think that you had an opportunity to ask all the questions. I thank you, Iryna. We had the Vice Prime Minister, Minister for the Reintegration of Temporarily Occupied Territories, Iryna Vereshchuk. At 2:30 p.m., we'll have the briefing of the security and defense sector. We'll be joined by the Ministry of Defense, the General Staff, the National Guard, and the State Border Service. Please stay with us.